Hello and welcome back to Khemia. We will be continuing where we left off, which, if you recall, is basically the ship is here. The ship that's going to take them to Khemia. Yay! Um, so in the previous video, I believe we saw Nefero basically showing that he still has some sort of feelings about what happened to him and pretty much everyone else. And I believe he referred to it as old pain or achewawi, which is, I guess you could say, like their word for PTSD. The Pharaoh still lingers on the thought that he was about to die, but somebody else died for him so that he could live. And it is something that connects in a way to what Scipio went through, because it was related to the fact that like the whole Cato thing, the Cato riots, where Scipio almost died, probably several times, which is again the reason why Scipio has PTSD and his fear of death and all these other things that are going on through his head. But yeah, they're going finally to Khemia. Yay! Hopefully in the next update we'll actually see Khemia, because this is, in the part that I'm going to read now, is technically where the story ended, and it went on hiatus, and then it ended up getting revised into this. But yeah, so we'll now be on the ship, and we'll be seeing a Skips who is a bit more reserved, because you can kind of get the sense that Skips is sort of like, oh, well, he's opening up to me, I should open up to him. Oh, all these little things, I should be more reciprocating. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, no, I'm supposed to be a spy. I'm supposed to be keeping tabs on them. I can't be trusting of them because they probably are spying on me too, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, oh, you little wolf. You little nerdy, dumb wolf. Anyway, so yeah, without further ado, let us continue Khemia. It's here! I know it's Veterus, having heard his overexcitement before, but his normally reedy voice is especially high and harsh now. We all look around in confusion, and then... Holy shit! Where did you come from? The ship has entered the atmosphere! Veterus's maniac demeanor seems to disturb my two friends, which is understandable considering that they've never seen him in such a state. It even surprises me a bit, but it's understanding considering that this is the beginning of he and I seeing large, state-funded Khemian tech in person for the first time. How far away is the shipcom? Arrival is approximately 2 minutes and 32 seconds. Scipio! I'm a bit distracted trying to think of anything else that I might need to do here on Adastra before I depart for at least several months. Longer if all goes well. I've already gone over my checklist more times than I can count, but I always feel as if I'm missing something. Veterus is adamant on getting my attention though, leaping in front of me. Scipio, my boy! His voice has transitioned into a hoarse whisper. Remember this moment! Cherish this moment! Then he yanks me down to a kneeling position before grabbing my head rather roughly and tilting it towards the sky. Behold, the first view of Khemian tech! Let it inspire you, Scipio. It is what Adastra can be! For some reason, as the ship arrives, I am not fully struck by its significance. It descends in a quiet, controlled manner as the sun gleams off the metal, and I think at first that maybe they just sent a parental-built one instead. It doesn't seem too different from Adastrian ships gifted to us by the Romanist parents. It is a bit more smooth in its architecture, and it's definitely larger than any that I've seen before. But it's simply that, a different version of what I had seen in the past. However, as we wait on the roof during takeoff preparations, I finally realize what I'm seeing. This isn't parental tech. This is actually Khemian tech. I'm not sure what I had been expecting, likely something loud and powerful, like the Amorphan ships that I'd seen. And unlike the many Adastrian ships that fly through the air above the capital, it was not simply gifted by the parents. This was built by the Khemians themselves. By engineers that were not only knowledgeable in how to fix ship components when they wore out or malfunctioned, but also in how to actually build them. And when taking that into consideration, It is certainly impressive. More than that, it is almost inconceivable. I've known this to be the case since studying Khmean history and culture, but to not be able to tell the difference between their own technology and the parents is stunning. It's even frightening me a bit as I climb aboard the sibling-built craft, as it appears more comfortable and perhaps even more stable than machinery built by the parents. The sense of awe and reverence comes to an abrupt end, however, as we board the ship and walk through the corridor, just when I happen to peer out the window. I'm looking out over the lake, a pleasant view before the palace, well, before everything flies away. It happens so fast that I go from seeing the Imperial Gardens to seeing what I realize is the entirety of the moon over the course of just a few seconds. The suddenness of it all, and the odd sensation of seeing such a movement yet feeling none of it, makes my stomach turn. My body leans forward, balance teetering as if wanting to fall out of the window, and I force myself upright before the others might notice. Luckily, Amicus and Veterus are looking out the window instead, seemingly unbothered by the sight. My sudden lurch gets the attention of who is behind me, though, and Nefero gently holds onto my elbow. "Are you alright?" There usually aren't windows on the few transport ships that I've been on in the past, but now that I can see, it's almost like when I would go sailing with friends on the ocean, the terrible, all-consuming seasickness that came with it. This is all at once, though. "Fine. I'm fine." "You don't look fine." The big Wolverine sidles up next to Nefero, looking at me closely, which makes me draw back. Then the stars bend in the most queasy way imaginable, and I stumble to the side again. I feel my pulse begin to pound in my ears, panicking at the way that I seem to be losing control of my body, at the same time fearing that I might lose control of my stomach as well. "You are most certainly not fine. Is this your first time in the stretch?" "Well, of course it is, Nef. The hell do you think?" Nefero is moving me away from the window, but I am already looking away, horrified. Not by the stretch, but because of the feeling growing inside of me. I'm going to vomit, in front of everyone. Somehow Amicus and Veterus have continued on their way, deep in conversation that I vaguely feel that I should be listening to. But that will have to wait. "I'm fine. I'm just wondering where a lavatory might be." My voice is slightly louder than it should be, though Amicus's deep resonated voice seems to cover it up, because I can hear him rumbling on as Nefero guides me down under the corridor of the ship. We're moving rather fast. I can barely distinguish the stars. "Of course, the Khemians developed a drive better than the one the parents lend us." "How was that possible?" Amicus echoes my own thoughts that would be at the forefront of my mind if not for the situation that I'm in. I allow myself to be pushed along until we reach the door that opens automatically without any panels being touched. "This area is the living quarters. I am not sure where you'll be bunking, but we'll be sharing the toilet." We move towards an even smaller door, one that does require the push of a panel. Considering the journey is only about 12 hours, it should be somewhat tolerable, I think. "Do you need an anti-nausea medication?" Too late for that. They kick in within minutes. Still too late. Nefero makes it as if to follow me into the lavatory, probably wanting to help me like last time, but I hold up a paw. "I'm fine. Just, My stomach heaves and I fear its contents are about to spew out Nefero. "I'll be right back." I quickly move into the little room, leaving a perturbed Nefero behind as I furiously stab at the panel inside the lavatory until the door slides shut. I stand over the toilet for several seconds, vaguely thinking to myself that it's quite similar to the ones on Adastra. I suppose that some things are universal in design, and then that's when my stomach comes out. I'm in the lavatory for a little while, maybe about 10 minutes, partially to collect myself, but mostly because I'm embarrassed and I just hope that Nefero has moved on for now. Still, at least I had managed not to be sick in the corridor like my stomach wanted to be. I'm running my paws under the faucet, cleaning myself up before the stream of water suddenly stops and an unfamiliar voice rings in my head. "Scipio?" I yelp out loud. "Apologies. Paw washing water limit has been reached." I stand there, staring at my own reflection in the mirror, deciding that what I'd heard came from within my head. But how? I begin to panic slightly before I realize that, Like with some parental tech I'd interacted with, it must be from my lingua. So I respond, Um, yes? Who is this? I get an immediate answer in return. I am Aham, the state-sponsored computer assistant of Khemia. Oh, oh, yes, I know of you. I've studied. I trail off, remembering myself that this is a computer, and it does not care about what I've studied, or about anything at all. You have studied me? The computer asks in a slightly curious tone after a polite pause. This is very odd. It's odd that it's speaking directly into my lingua. Com never did that, and I doubt that he can. But something else is even more strange about this computer that I'm trying to put my finger on. Uh, yes. Uh, I did not expect you to speak through my lingua. It was a bit startling. I feel as if I would remember that bit of information if I came across it in my studies. Apologies, Scipio. I was converted to lingua use only unless otherwise directed. This is to protect the privacy of all those who I am speaking to. Would you prefer auditory communication instead? No, this is fine. Very well. I wonder the same thing that I wondered when I first saw this ship, the same thing Amicus questioned when we entered the stretch. How is this possible? It implies that the Khemians have learned how to access and manipulate the lingua directly. While it is impressive, it also rekindles a feeling of fear. What else might they be able to do if they can fully access the tiny piece of machinery embedded in my brain? Do we really know the extent of Khemian knowledge and power? Is it really possible to do such things alone without parental help? As I'm contemplating this, a hem fills the silence, like a sapient noticing alone the conversation. I can provide you with non-water methods to sanitize, if you wish. Unfortunately, our water reserves are limited. No. I'm fine. Thank you. You are welcome, Scipio, and it's a pleasure meeting you. You as well. I realize what bothers me about him, aside from accessing my neurotech without my consent or foreknowledge. With Com, I never feel as if he is truly intelligent. I never feel as if he has thoughts or feelings of his own while he communicates. I might say Com is comparatively stupid, and he's simply a program that consumes information, analyzes, and outputs sentences based on that information. This Khemian machine is something different, and I wonder how widespread it is on Khemia. The eerie feeling persists as I stare into the mirror, feeling that something isn't right, something about the Khemians. I banish the thought for now, and I adjust my robes, trying to keep my emotions under control. Now is not the time. I can discuss this with Veterus or maybe even Amicus later. With that in mind, I look into the mirror one last time to assess the state of my facial fur before tapping the panel and stepping out into the corridor. Oh! Why is he still here? It has to have been at least 15 minutes. Hello? I had jumped just like an Nefero, and now I quickly smoothed down my robe, a gesture meant to cover my reaction, but one that only makes it all the more obvious. Had he been trying to listen through the door? Either way, it puts me on guard. Hello? I pause, trying to think of something to say, but I can't think of anything, so I simply ask what would be the most normal in the situation. Did you need the lavatory? No, just checking to see if you are well. You looked quite shaken up. As Nefero confirms the reason I thought that he might be lingering here, I just feel a small flash of irritation. He's looking after me, which is kind and generous of him, as he has no obligation to do so. But it makes me feel childish, him looking after me this closely. Perhaps even suspicious. I adjust my expression to appear more serious but also calm. A cool, emotionless look. I am fine, thank you, Nefero. Please do not worry so much for my well-being. I do not wish to be the reason for you neglecting your own duties. The look on Nefero's face is hard to describe. It's not a pleasant look, and it's enough to throw me off despite him not saying anything. Another moment of silence passes and I begin to think over Khemian etiquette, wondering if I violated a taboo of some kind. Of course, Nefero would be understanding of such things, but considering that we are not on Adastra anymore, perhaps he is less forgiving now? Just as I begin to open my own mouth to ask what the issue is, Nefero finally speaks. I see. Very well then, I shall leave you to attend to your own matters then. Apologies for bruising your Wolven Pride. Nefero turns on his heel before briskly walking away. I stand there alone, the low hum of the ship's various moving parts the only sound filling the heavy silence while I try to understand what just happened. I had acted within diplomatic norms. Really, any interaction among diplomats is normal as long as only words are used, specifically the right words. Present an aura of civility even if your primal instincts are telling you to knock each other's teeth out. This was one of the main issues of pre-Drusus Adastra. Apparently, Wolven diplomats of the era routinely took swings at other siblings and even amongst themselves when they became angry or offended. Despite this being over 10,000 years in the past, it is a reputation that still haunts us. I suppose that it's not helpful that our experimental attempts at a republic have resulted in brawls within the Senate in just the past year. I'm sure footage of the fights has shown gleefully across the news channels of the other siblings, showing that we haven't changed, that there are some things innately wrong with our culture or even our species. While I might admit that Wolven hubris has been the main hindrance throughout our history, I'm not going to allow myself to be treated as some sort of idiot savage. We have our own culture, our own language, our own universities. We witnessed it. We saw you bleed because of him. Perhaps he wishes to see you bleed even more. And I feel that despite my admiration for Khemia as a whole, they have their own issues with hubris. Nefero is a clear example of that. Wolven Pride. The hackles among my shoulders begin to rise, and I work to contain myself. What an odd and frankly childish thing for him to say. I suppose it was insensitive of me to act in such a manner towards someone who so recently called me a friend, but his reaction was clearly hostile and hypocritical. I suspect that he has issues deeper than his facade will even admit. But that unfamiliar anger in my mind dampens as I remember my duties. Not even 1 hour into my mission and I'm already failing. I stand there for a whole while in silence, wavering as if on the edge of a cliff before gritting my teeth and clenching my paws into fists. No, none of this. Either I will succeed or I will fail, but in both cases I will continue on and serve the Empire for all the greater good of Adastra. I am not some Wolven bitch for Khemians to look down upon and shake their heads at. So pushing through the hurt and embarrassment and blinking past the blur of moisture in my eyes, I set off aimlessly, unsure of where to go, but just wanting to move. I'm sure that they'll summon me through Aham if I'm needed. As I walk quickly through the corridor, I happen to glance at the windows, having forgotten about the nauseatingly bending light, and I feel my stomach lurch instantly. But I'm still feeling motivated by my sudden burst of furious confidence in myself, so I say in a low, stern voice, "No." I force myself to continue looking while I walk, demanding my stomach to settle. Still, it doesn't appear that I have gained voluntary control over the mechanisms that dictate nausea in my body. Already irritated by my earlier failure, I force myself to continue staring, feeling that, in a way, this is punishment for being unable to handle simple, easy things that no one else has difficulty handling. It's similar to when I experienced insomnia when I was first away from home at university. It was disturbingly satisfying to tell my own body that it only had itself to blame for being so tired during classes, and that maybe it should sleep next time. I do the same now, mentally sneering at my rolling stomach for being so weak that it can't handle the movement of light. Nefero's assurance that others have a weak mind like my own is difficult to believe now. He probably only says whatever he thinks I want. My meandering thoughts are brought to a very sudden and rude end as my feet catch something on the floor, and my paws flail out for something to grab. I yelp loudly as a few toe claws bend backwards before landing heavily on my side, my paw pads slapping the smooth, hard floor to keep from falling further. Rubbing at the left side of my hip, I look down at my feet in confusion. 3 metallic crates stick out from a doorway into the corridor, and my foot had caught the corner of one sticking out furthest. Huh? There's a heavy grunt that I recognize immediately, and Brunus sticks his head around the doorway with a stern squint before looking down and seeing me. Skip? The hell are you doing? My irritation and self-pity are only amplified now. I get to my feet roughly, likely flashing Brunus with my undergarments as I don't bother trying to keep my robe down. He's the type not to care anyway. Is leaving your belongings out for others to injure themselves on normal Khemian custom? Brunus blinks at me, probably due to the fact that he's never seen me act like this. Huh? I'm moving stuff in right now. Is it a Wolven thing to not look where you're going? I'm simply curious as to whether or not I should be more careful around you Khemians, especially if I want to return to Adastra in one piece. What the hell crawled up your ass, Skip? I sigh and massage the bridge of my snout with both paws, feeling my stomach lurch again, exacerbated by my falling. I have to admit that Brunus' technique for de-escalating tense situations, despite seeming informal and unrefined, are disarming. I don't know, Brunus. Ahem? Could I get an antiemetic, please? Certainly. A drone has been dispatched to your location. Speaking of which, I just had to deal with Neferro biting my head off for being fat. I turn my attention back to Brunus. Speaking of which? What do you mean by that? Speaking of things up your... Oh, crap. Brunus winces. You guys are kinda uptight about that sort of thing, aren't you? I didn't mean it like that. You could have been up his ass for all I wave my paw, providing an escape for the flustered Wolverine. The anger that I had felt earlier beginning to dissipate. It's difficult to be mad at Brunus anyway. Yes, uptight. Anyway, I am sorry that I snapped at you. I'm not feeling well. Yeah, looks like you ain't. Brunus watches as I am suddenly distracted by a smooth, glossy black dome that levitates towards me, then extends a tiny, white wafer. I take it with some confusion. Thanks? Do I need water, or... Goes under the tongue. I try not to visibly blanch at the idea of letting vile medication sit in my mouth for any amount of time, but quick relief is preferable, assuming it works as quickly as Neferro said, or if it even works after the nausea has set in. Alright, anyway, what were you saying about Neferro being upset? Does he usually criticize your size? I carefully drop the square wafer under my tongue, hardly feeling it land before I close my mouth and it dissolves instantly. Brunus shrugs. Not really. I was in the hall bringing stuff in and he told me to move and not to take up the entire space or something. He scurried off before I could ask what crawled up his ass. You two fighting or something? Brunus looks at me, waiting for a response. I point at my mouth and to remind him of the medication while being simultaneously glad that I have an excuse not to respond. Oh, you can swallow it now. It's made with some weird nanotech stuff that makes you absorb it in like a few seconds. Though Brunus doesn't sound like he knows what he's talking about, he's definitely right. The nausea is almost instantly gone, and I'm glad for this Khemian nanotech. I expect the taste to be bitter and acrid, but instead it's slightly sweet, almost non-existent. Fascinating. I say it to myself, never having had an antiemetic that worked after the fact, though Brunus responds with a face of disgust. I'd rather feel sick than take that shit. Makes me feel slow as hell all day. Pap takes care of motion sickness and all the other problems too. The Wolverine looks down at the large crates. By the way, you're rooming with me. I already pushed your stuff in. I take a look around Brunus to peer inside a small room with two beds on either side, one of which already has two identical metal crates next to it. Oh, thank you, Brunus. It makes me feel guilty, knowing that he had to haul my belongings in first, only for me to yell at him. Sure. Don't know why they dropped all our shit here instead of in the actual room, though. Yo, Ahem! It's silent for a moment, and I wonder if Brunus failed to summon the assistant, but then I remember how it works. Get me some pap. They destroyed my stash on Adastra. Brunus gives me a knowing look. Probably destroyed by that asshole magistrate. I'll bet he's high off his ass right now. For the sake of hotep! I'm confused by the sudden change in tone, then I realize that he's responding to something Ahem said. I suppose there are downsides to having a computer assistant only you can hear. You want me to list everything? Headache, backache, stomachache, heartache. Yeah, great, thanks. Brunus turns his attention back to me as I look down at one of the crates. Normally it would be levitating slightly off the ground though, through the use of magnets, but I suppose that the floor here is not compatible. Here, I will push these ones inside. It sounds like you are in a great deal of pain. Brunus shrugs. I'll live. You just gotta give Ahem enough reasons to justify dealing it out. I don't mind you helping though. I grunt as I slide one of the crates across the floor, wishing that it at least had wheels. Isn't drug usage free and plentiful on Khemia? Brutus makes a snorting sound. That's what they tell ya in wolf school? His knowing, condescending tone might have irritated me, but I know Brutus doesn't mean it to be demeaning or hurtful. Unlike what Nefero just did. Besides, snide remarks about wolves are something that I will probably hear regularly on Khemia, so this is a good opportunity to practice separating my emotions at my work. Well, not told, but shown footage of addicted Khemians in the streets of the capital. Ugh, propaganda. Is it not true, though? Doesn't matter if it's true. What matters is what they're using it for. I decide to let the topic go at that point, knowing that there is truth in what we both said. Also because it's difficult to continue talking under the strain of pushing the crate. Brutus gives a much louder grunt as he follows me into the room, pushing the last crate. Anyway, it does seem that you are in a lot of pain. I come to a stop at the foot of what I assume is Brutus's bed, while the Wolverine follows shortly after. Weird. One sec. He stops to catch his breath. If the aches flare up real bad, I just gotta get a script from the palace doctor. My slightly heavy breathing is dwarfed by the huffing and panting of the Wolverine as he leans heavily against the crate. I don't like him very much. Not being able to feel pain is kinda scary to me. But like I said, it ain't bad. I can still walk. Brutus sits on the crate, his sizable rear covering most of it. Is it related to when you were injured? Yep. Happened when I was real young though, so it feels normal to me. I wonder if he's going to tell me what happened, but when he doesn't, I don't press further. Anyway, help helps a bit with that, but it's mostly mental shit where it really does wonders for me. Keeps me sane, I think. Oh? How so? I try not to seem too interested. Even though we aren't on Adastra, the idea of a psychoactive drug so readily available is frightening. Well, I guess it kinda makes everything make a little more sense. Slows down stuff so that I can think through it properly. That sounds rather nice. And what I like most about it is that it makes emotions feel more meaningful, I guess. I don't know though. Never had to explain it before. Just feels good. I raise a brow. Doesn't that get in the way of your work? I know he smokes the pipe almost constantly, and while I can understand using it for leisure, I would be hesitant to alter my mind while doing important work on behalf of the parents. Well, that's the thing. I feel things better. It's easier to empathize, and that's important for diplomacy. I think wanting to inquire more about emotions and diplomacy, but I'm also unsure if I should be discussing such matters with Brutus. I was told that he is a highly skilled and experienced negotiator in Khemian politics, even graduating from Sabayet, the school Nefero had also gone to. I had to remember that they're watching and observing too, and even if I am the lowest ranking Adastrian here, that could make me a target. I'm spared making the decision as a soundless drone floats into the cabin, this time extending a small black capsule, about the size of my thumb. Brutus eyes it before plucking the capsule rather aggressively from the drone. Thanks. This'll last me a solid half hour, Aham. Anyway, yeah. Brutus uses a flicking motion with his thumb to open the tiny capsule. You shouldn't let personal feelings get in the way, but it's important to empathize with the side that you're negotiating with. I watch him pack the strange pipe contraption for a while, the Wolverine handling the flaky green concoction carefully so as not to spill any of it. Can it help with, distracting thoughts? I can't stop myself from asking. I have, for the most part, been able to keep myself in check for the better part of 2 years. But the past hour has left me feeling as if it's all about to fall apart. I realize then how desperate I am for some kind of solution, a fix for this dysfunctional brain of mine. I suppose my approach isn't subtle, however. Brutus leans back and eyes me closely, his pipe held in one paw. It might. It's different for everyone, but I know people that use it to focus. You doing okay, by the way? Definitely. As you know, it's very illegal to possess such substances on Adastra, so I am simply curious about this part of Khemian culture. Brutus continues to study me, and I try to keep my paws from fidgeting by clasping them together. Perhaps it does not matter considering Nefero will likely tell Brunus about my issues anyway, despite his promise. Well, Hap is just a Khemian strain of Chronoma, which is native to Omorpha. Kinda funny that it's banned on Adastra when you guys borrowed so much from the cats. Brunus winks at me to lighten the jab, even though I'm too anxious at the idea of this plant to even really register it. Anyway, if you really are interested, I can take you to an Omorphan dispensary. The cats really know their shit when it comes to anything plant-related, obviously. They got a bunch of stuff that might be better for you. Ah, well, maybe I'll have a look at one sometime. Brunus can clearly see that I am interested, which only convinces me to back out of this odd, reckless attempt to fix myself. While I know that much of the education that I received of the use of recreational drugs was simply state-sponsored propaganda, I still feel deeply uneasy about it. Using a drug to patch over a mental deficiency like mine simply feels unwise. Just as I'm about to head over to my side of the room, however, Brunus sticks his pipe out towards me. Want a puff? I know it's not a wolf thing, but it'd be rude of me to not offer. I stare at the pipe for a second, my curiosity rekindled for just a moment before the words of my instructor in mindfulness comes to me. Meditation is key, Scipio. Alcohol only damages your self-awareness and self-control. I assume that he would say this about most drugs, especially those used for mind alteration. So I hold up a paw. I am tempted due to wanting to understand Khemian culture better, but I should avoid any psychoactive substances while I'm on this mission. That's probably a good idea. It can be a hard one to predict if you've never had it. The big Wolverine ambles over to his own bed, sitting down with a heavy sigh, inhaling from his pipe, the room filling with the herbal smell before it quickly dissipates again. It must be the air filtration system vacuuming it away. So, what do wolves do for fun in a place where everything is illegal? I sit back, feeling a bit more sluggish now, probably due to the nausea medication. We have alcohol. Saying this reminds me of the time that I asked my doctor for something to help cope with the anxiety 3 years ago. I especially remember his look of surprise and confusion before telling me that sedatives were a womanly medication, and that I should instead go buy some cheap drink instead. I certainly felt manly, boldly drinking an entire mug of toxic-tasting ale while my friends cheered me on. And it did help, at least until I began blacking out from drinking too much, and that frightened me away from it. Probably for the best. Brunus makes a face. Bleh, not a fan of this stuff. Makes me sick and gives me a headache. I don't enjoy it anymore. I mainly partook to better match the mood of my friends on our nights off. Oh, I understand that feeling. And it tastes like shit. Sure, acquired taste and all, but it all tastes the same to me, just different shades of shit. Yes, the taste would probably make me vomit these days, but mostly I didn't like the feeling of having less control over myself. I've seen a few friends completely consumed by it, and it's a terrible thing. I wonder about one of them now, Gaius, who had gone from perfect marks at the university to living on the streets. It had happened after losing his best friend in the riots, who was also a friend of mine. Spurious. My breath hitches and I sit up straighter. Sorry, Brunus, but do you mind if I meditate? Oh yeah, not at all. Do you, need me to leave? No, you're fine. Brunus nods and lies back on his bed, staring at the ceiling as he continues to smoke his pipe. I sit cross-legged at the foot of my bed, beginning with the familiar first step of focusing on my breathing. I listen to my breathing and feel the rise and fall of my torso. I smell the puppy whey along with the slightly stale and metallic scent of the recycled air. I'm surprised by how I feel right now, as if I could try more complex meditation without issue, but I don't dare do that without my instructor. Nefero might know how. I feel my anxiety spike, but I quickly focus again. I'm here, in the moment, without judgment. They pushed him out of the dormitory window and he landed on his head, on the cobblestones. He was just trying to hide. Why would they do this? Why would anyone do this? Because they're mindless, uneducated scum. What else would we expect from those districts? I'm breathing. Remember breathing. But I feel my mind wanting to leave, almost like it's levitating, being drawn towards something else. My eyes fly open, shocked. Shit, sorry. I tried to lift one of the crates on my bed, so I didn't have to bend over and I dropped. Skip? I can't move. Or speak. Everything appears strange, vivid and crisp. I can smell the assassin's blood and entrails again. The Ahiwawi is going to stay with you forever, isn't it? A voice I've only heard in my dreams whispers directly into my ear. It's a real voice, not one that comes from my head or imagination. It's a rustling of dead leaves, rattling out at the throat of something ancient, something that knows me better than I know myself. I feel myself back in the den, so I reach for the only escape that I can, the feeling that was pulling on my mind earlier. Shit! I hear Brunus's panicked voice, but I'm far too detached to even wonder about what he said or why. I vaguely feel a jolt through my head and body, but that's it. Then I feel nothing. This is what true peace feels like, Scipio, but even better because you don't exist at all. Imagine a universe without life. How peaceful things would be then. Nothing. It's a perfect feeling. Sapients cannot be trusted. You included, Scipio. Remember how the Cretan wolves treated you? Remember how the Khemians treated the wolves? Remember how Nefero treated you? And do you remember your true purpose here? How you are treating Nefero? I hate it. But most important, remember how the parents treat sapiens in the name of agency? And yet what choice do any of you have? You can help those like you and all other sapiens. I would if I could. You can. I have no idea how long it's been, but when I feel back in my own mind, I'm even more confused about where I am. I wonder if I have died, like Urbicus died. Maybe I fell and hit my head and died like Spurius did. Or maybe our ship somehow crashed and I've been left afloat through space forever. Or for only a few more seconds before I suffocate. That would be alright, I decide, even as I take a deep, easy breath of air. I would rather feel this way, insignificant and meaningless against the monolithic oppression of the universe. It makes me feel oddly peaceful. My goodness, Scipio. If only your friends and colleagues could hear half of what you think. A deep but feminine voice comes from seemingly every direction. I look around, suddenly feeling as if I'm being spied upon, wondering if the directionless voice is from my own head. What? Those weren't my thoughts, though. There is a deep raspy chuckle, one that I recognize as distinctly feline, the type that I've heard from recordings that involve Hindo tigers. Perhaps not, but do you not agree with them, young wolf? Who are you? Are you from Hindo? Very good, especially for a wolf living in a time where Hindo has severed relations with Adastra completely. But can you guess who I actually am? Her eyes are so piercing, so intense that, although I want to ask again what exactly is happening, I feel obliged to answer. And so I quickly run through a list of tigresses that I know of, only one of which is alive, the current ruler of Hindo. Maharani Ardi? The tigress eyes me closely so that I lower my ears, just wishing that I can go back soon. Considering the impossibility of where you are, you'd think Artie wouldn't try to come all the way here to talk to some rebellious pup? I swallow hard trying to keep my breathing even, because whatever this is, I think that it is somehow real. But there could be an explanation. Are... are you Meera? The quiet smile on her face answers my question. Well, I suppose 2 attempts is not terrible, though I must say that the human knew immediately. Amicus is human? Yes. The voice of dead leaves is gone now, as if the feeling of nothingness, and I'm embarrassed as I long to be back there knowing the tigress knows what I'm thinking. Meera stays silent, though the look on her face tells me that she's waiting for me to speak. Did the... Are the parents doing this? Are they making contact with me? It is rumored that they did the same with the human. Meera is quiet for a while, so I stay quiet as well, unable to think of any other reason for this to be happening, if it really is happening. The parents are a complex matter, Scipio. Direct communication with them is impossible, unless they break their own rules against interference. She narrows her eyes. Think more logically, though. Concerning the voice, would the parents say such a thing to you? I answer honestly. I don't know. I try to think logically, as she told me to do. Maybe it's a test? Or maybe this is part of the plan? Do you know who that was? Was it you? Meera is quiet again, but it's more like she's pondering something. I cannot say for certain, Scipio, but what I do know is that you don't trust the parents. That sends a jolt of fear through me. I do. I just don't understand what the purpose of any of this is. The tiger chuckles again. Take comfort in the fact that it's not your own fault. The parents plant all the seeds, after all. Why did you bring me here? Is there something that I am supposed to do, or maybe you have instructions? You brought yourself here, Scipio. The stretch drive makes the layers between planes more permeable. Would you believe that the parents physically stopped the human from killing Amicus while they were in the stretch? I don't know if I do, and I don't know what to say. Such agency they've gifted us with, eh? Meera taps a finger on her head. The fear continues to rise in me, not wanting to anger the parents and not wanting to be dead, because the amalgamation is where we truly go. You fear death. You fear the amalgamation. Rather, you feel it is an abomination deep down, though you will not admit it even to yourself. My fur bristles and I try to jolt myself awake, but nothing happens. You do not trust the parents or anyone for that matter. Am I going to be punished? They know that I'm a fraud, on a mission to further parental agendas when I don't even believe them to be right. I'm only here for selfish reasons. I believe disagreeing with their grand plan is one of the lesser troubling thoughts in your head. You have enough hatred to set fire to those wolves yourself. You are capable of dark things, Scipio, but who wouldn't be after that day? I realize my legs are trembling, that I can at least feel them. That gives me hope. Please wake up. Meera raises a paw. Easy, young wolf. I am only here to help you, to warn you, and to advise. You need guidance, and I am here to offer it to you if you will take it. I frown and rack my brain for the lessons that I had on Meera, if she was ever used in this manner in the past. Her main purpose was that of self-sacrifice, to push Drusus in the correct direction for the Empire. She has little to do with the parents. As far as I know, it is only the monitors that communicate for the parents. Does that mean that this is not sanctioned by the parents? Yes. And do not be afraid that you are not in lockstep with their vision for the future. They've limited themselves by professing the importance of free will, choice without interference. I am not afraid to admit that I disagree with them completely. I never entered the amalgamation as I believe that it is an attack on life, rather than a preservation of it. Besides, they can't even agree with each other. They bicker just as much as siblings. The borders of this odd in-between world begin to shimmer and fade, and I realize it's ending. Wait, please. You said that you did not have to go to the amalgamation? That you can help fix me? Can you tell me more of the voice? Please don't leave me yet. Meera smiles at me, at my desperation that I know must look insane, but I truly am desperate. This will not be the last time we speak. Trust that I will appear again when the time is right. This was merely an introduction. Okay, thank you, Meera. It was a pleasure meeting you, Scipio. Until next time. But as I'm feeling the relief of escape, another voice adds their own thoughts just as I am leaving, one that I recognize, higher pitched and female, that of a jackal. There we go. Scipio, say this to Neferu. Nettek hotep Akhem. Tell him to stop sulking like a spoiled prince and to communicate with you. This is important. You'll understand. I feel my body once more, and I'm lying on something soft. I don't know. He said that he was gonna meditate, and then he looked at me all scared before his eyes just rolled in the back of his head. I can't move though, my body feeling locked in place, though my fingers and ears start to regain some movement. Did you give him something? No. Skip? My paws begin to shift. Hey, look, he's moving. I feel a touch on my shoulder, gentle and tentative. Did you blow the vapor in his direction? He is a wolf and has no experience with that drug. He could be very sensitive to it. If that's all it takes to get him high, then why hasn't he ever freaked out when he's sitting next to me? I'm sorry to tell you that's something that you already know, but Pap smells terrible. He turns his nose away whenever you get close. As I begin to come back to what I believe is reality, they continue to go back and forth, and I imagine their voices in a sparring match. It reminds me of the one time Neferu managed to convince the Wolverine to spar. Despite his build and size, Brunus isn't much of a fighter. The match barely lasted more than a minute before Brunus was on his knees and retching, so loud that he sounded like a giant squawking bird. Even though I felt bad for him at the time, I chuckled, surprising even myself. They stop arguing. Then, all at once, the paralysis releases me, and I shift slowly. I'm confused for a moment, then sit up quickly. I realize the scene that I'm making right now, but I don't know what happened. All I can do is say the only thing that might confirm that I'm not going insane before I forget it. Nettek hotep Akhem. The way that they stare at me makes my ears fold back for a moment, embarrassed about my clumsy, heavy accent despite the situation, knowing my words are heard directly by the both of them, unfiltered by their linguas. But I'm more worried that if it was only a dream, I'd probably spoken some faux Khemian garbage pulled from my pre-intermediate knowledge of the language. I almost want to make the excuse that it takes years to learn Khemian, especially for wolves. Neferu's reaction says otherwise though, but I'm not sure if it's a preferable one. What did you just say? I stare back at him, feeling out of body, as if I've suddenly been dropped here from a distant moon. Clearly it meant something, possibly something serious or even something bad. I don't know. I was meditating and got lost and... I don't know. I cover my face, finally overwhelmed and not knowing what to do. What the hell is happening to me? It's quiet, but I hear them murmur to each other for a moment, followed by movement, and then I look up. Brunus is gone. The bed shifts with added weight as Neferu sits next to me. He's quiet, as if waiting for me to say more, to explain what I just said. I'm sorry. I don't know what that means. I know the word peace and maybe welcome, but there is a lack of resources to learn Khemia at Adastra, and it's especially hard for Adastrans because of the difference. I realize that I'm over-explaining and trail off, deciding to wait for Neferu to break the silence. It sounded fine, Skip. It's the first time that I've heard a wolf speak a full sentence in Khemian, actually, but I'm much more interested in what prompted you to say it. Is it a bad thing to say? I try to keep my paws from grabbing my thighs too tightly, but Neferu shakes his head. It means, welcome and be at ease, brother. As if to pay me in kind, he says it in Adastran. Now I hear Neferu's voice unfiltered, but his accent is pleasant, almost sing-songy in its quality, and I know that it sounds better than my own bumbling accent stumbling over Khemian. I can tell that he's fluent just from that sentence. Neferu waves a paw as if brushing something aside. Roughly anyway. It can be worded in many ways, but I'm wondering where you heard it, or why you said it. I look down at the sterile metal floor of the ship, only now able to absorb what I'd seen and heard while I'd been meditating, though meditation was never done anything like that to me before. As I think back on it, I don't want to tell him the majority of what I saw and heard, but I can at least tell him about the third and final voice. I heard a voice while meditating, a female jackal, I think. Nefero is clearly trying to keep his reaction muted, but he can't fully hide his surprise. I feel a bit uneasy again. Should I be wary of it? I didn't see anyone. Did that voice say anything else? My ears ducked down again. It, mentioned that, you should communicate with me and not sulk like a spoiled prince or something? Nefero makes a soft huffing sound of surprise, almost like a laugh. It really is her then. Who? My youngest sister, Aya. Really? Why would she contact me? How can she even make contact like that? She's on Khemia, right? I'd studied the royal family, but there was a noticeable lack of information on the youngest of the 4 siblings aside from her being some sort of religious scholar who performed traditional Khemian rituals for the family. She's on Khemia, yes, but as to how she's contacting you or why, I'm not sure. She's certainly never contacted me like that in the past 3 years. There was a touch of bitterness in his voice, likely covering up the hurt that he feels if it's true that Aya is the only member of his family that Nefero is close to. But how was it even possible for her to do that? She said that you would understand. Well, her duties involve things that are quite abstract and beyond my own understanding. If she scolded me and said that I should communicate with you, she might have an interest in you specifically for whatever reason. It's quiet for a few seconds. But how does she even know me? This is making me feel like I'm still dreaming, Nefero. You don't even seem that surprised that she's able to do this. I know that he's not telling me everything that he knows. Nefero opens his mouth, then closes it, as if struggling to find the right words. Don't worry too much about it. She's very, she can be hard to understand and sometimes gets excited over things that others would find insignificant. This doesn't feel like communication to me. Nefero, you're emotionally close to her, right? Yes, probably because the two of us didn't exactly fit in with the family, though she's doing a much better job of it now than I am. So she must have told you at some point what she's capable of what her role is. Nefero, she's reaching across light years to speak to me. I'm a bit concerned about that. Nefero sighs deeply. The truth is I am under a parental oath not to discuss it. I might not even be allowed to say that, but I'll wait for a monitor to smite me if that's the case. I know that it all sounds very strange and very frightening, so I didn't want to add to your worries. Keep in mind that she, like I, can be a bit, dramatic at times. I see. I don't see. I still have many, many questions about the other voices that she seems to be fighting against, but maybe I can talk to Aya herself about it, if I'm even allowed to do so. I can say that if she has the ability to astral project to connect to other sapients, then that is a new information to me. However, it is not out of the realm of possibility considering what she does. If that were always the case, I would have expected her to have given me advice over the past 3 years. Again, I might get in trouble for even saying this much. I think. I apologize in advance for even suggesting this, but you have every reason to believe that she's currently alive, right? Of course. Why wouldn't she be? Now Nefero is the one looking nervous. I fully decide then that I won't be bringing up Meera, who is very much dead. Sorry, just trying to figure out how this is happening. I've heard claims that unamalgamated spirits can do that. Well, if that were somehow the case, I would be a bit upset that she appeared to you only to tell me to stop feeling sorry for myself. Not entirely bad advice, though. However, she would be amalgamated, no doubt. I still see that I've worried Nefero, so I decide to move the conversation along by asking about what she meant. That makes sense. Maybe I can meet her when we arrive, assuming it really was her. Of course, I'll introduce you. Thank you, Nefero. So, if you're not allowed to discuss her duties, What do you think that she meant when she said to communicate with me? Judging by what you told me, I think that she wants me to help you instead of acting as I did when you came out of the lavatory. I had almost forgotten about that. I suddenly feel better despite the terrifying ordeal that I had experienced during my meditation. Nefero's sister encouraging us to communicate will be very helpful to me, as she seems to have a good deal of influence and not just over her brother. Well, I did react in a rude way myself. I could tell what I had said was hurtful to you. I was just embarrassed about being seen in that moment of weakness. Ah, you need not apologize. I was being nosy and you reacted in an understandable way. If you'll accept an excuse, my overreaction is rooted in past experiences. Oh? How so? I once knew an amorphin by the name of Alexios. Oh? You knew him personally? Alexios, the sibling pet and rumored lover of Cassius, the former false emperor and also Amicus's brother. Alexios was an agent of Amorpha sent to Adastra to sow chaos in the very fabric of our society, a mission that was ultimately successful. One could say that he is the main reason for the riots occurring. Well, I knew him, but I doubt that anyone knew him personally, aside from maybe Cassius. Anyway, despite nearly toppling Adastra, he was never a really good spy, but he was underestimated. And he struck Cassius's fancy. It's easier to be a spy when you have a direct connection to the very heart of power. Nefero looks at me candidly, in case I missed it. But I didn't. I already know that he sees right through me, but I also think that I sometimes see right through him. In all honesty though, I wasn't thinking about the game I, or both of us, are playing. I should be calculating the best way to establish a relationship that Nefero will feel reliant upon, even if it's detrimental to Khemia. Veritas told me earlier that this is an especially promising exploit considering Nefero's relationship with his family is poor, to put it lightly. That's my end goal, despite the slim odds of it going that far, or even being needed. His brother and younger sister are both in positions of much higher power and influence, and after learning more about his youngest sister and her secretive directives, she might be as well. But for the first time, for right now at least, I am following my emotions where they take me. The dutiful part of me, and the part that I thought was all me, is scolding myself, but for some reason after the experience that I just had, it doesn't feel like the most pressing issue. It is a bit alarming, but I calm myself by reasoning that this is simply the best way to approach Nefero, that my beliefs and goals have not changed. One strange experience during meditation, an experience that I'm not even sure was real, should not be able to cause that. Another part of me, one that feels foreign, knows that it was real, but that won't help with staying calm. I see. Well, whenever he found himself cornered, he often resorted to a very, strange state of mind. Basically, he would exhibit the expression and emotion of a rock, a classic diplomatic defensive maneuver that he often used to get out of situations that he couldn't, though he was never subtle about it. He is possibly the most selfish, amoral political official that I have ever had the displeasure of dealing with. To be clear, I knew his motives were to serve Amorpha, which can be argued to be the most anti-Anastrian sibling world. But what I didn't expect was a sniveling coward, willing to destroy the foundation of entire sibling civilization and cause loss of life in the thousands. I nod, though never having known the cat, I feel a bit detached. Amorpha has always loathed Adastra, as they see us as the biggest threat to stability in the Galaxias. That, along with having parents who shared the same galaxy before arriving, resulted in a closeness of our cultures that only emphasizes our differences. And, with all due respect to Amicus, I had always viewed the situation to be the fault of the Imperial family for allowing an Amorphin to get so close in the first place. Anyway, but when you came out of the lavatory, the look that you gave me was strikingly similar, but I know that's not you, Scipio. You're a good, honest person, and I know that you would never do such a thing if the intention is simply chaos and destruction. And despite our differences in culture and language, and despite the history between our people, you are my friend, and I trust you. I almost smiled despite myself. This is Nefero communicating. Perhaps he is an outliner amongst the supposedly blunt Khemians, but I am able to understand what he is saying. I know that you are here to gather intelligence to better Adastra's position in the Alliance, and to use me as a tool, just as Alexios used Cassius. I am lonely and I need someone that I can call a friend, a true friend. And in this relationship, I know that you have nothing to lose while could lose everything. But I also know that you are full of compassion and that you would never do what he did. And so while I know that you can't be trusted, I trust you. The real question is if he's making the right choice. I look Nefero in the eye in what I hope is a meaningful way so that he might know that I understand. And I trust you. I simply want the galaxy to achieve harmony and it sounds pup-like, but all I want is less hardship and anguish for sapients and all other living things. I feel the fur on the nape of my neck bristle just slightly, feeling sick just being in my skin. I would watch the clay district burn for the sheer pleasure of it. I feel anything but joy in the destruction of uneducated, cruel sapients who act like dumb beasts lesser than livestock. Thank you, Skip. Truly. I have a feeling that this experience will change your life and your perspective on life itself. Adastra did that for me, both good and bad, but I wouldn't take it back, so just keep an open eye and I will always be available if you need help. Thank you, Nefero, truly. And please, if I offend again, just talk to me. We are friends, Wolven friends after all, and that means that we can be very blunt. Sounds like a plan. Now we should get some sleep so as not to throw off our schedules when we arrive in about 6 hours. Brunus is actually in my room, so I can sleep in his bed if you don't mind. I don't mind, and we both end up sleeping in my bed. Mercifully, I am left alone by the voices. That is until I hear Ahim. Exiting stretch drive in 10 minutes. Prepare for security check and royal escort. To be continued. Oh, I read all of that in one sitting. So, I guess as Orion would say, we're so back! Anyways, so yeah, we're back with Adastra, or I guess the Adastra world at large. If I recall correctly, the official word is the Khemia will be updated monthly. So I'm not exactly sure if next month you'll see another one, but it should be like that. It'll be 1 month, they'll have an update, and the other month they'll have an update. So for me, I think I will probably be seeing the next update for Patreon very soon. And you guys will end up seeing that one the month after, probably. Also in I can never, for some reason I can't pronounce that word. Interia will also be updating though. So that's that part of the visual novel, or that part of the Adastra cinematic universe is still being updated. But it has a longer schedule, I guess. So while this one is updated every month, unless there has to be like a break or something, the other one is updated every 2 to 3 months. So the reason why they're still working on that story, at least me thinking this, is that it has some sort of like backstory stuff for what happens, because it takes place during Adastra when they have like the little tour of the moon where Marco, Amicus, Nefero, Cassius, Alexios, Virginia, and Bjorn the bear are touring the moon, and certain things that they're going to mention in this visual novel happen during that time, I think, too. One of those being the fact that Lux went from being like this sort of little outside, rebellious little city that hated everything and everyone, especially Khemians, to finally being connected to the wider moon as a whole. And in the previous update, as far as I remember, there was a conversation between Marco, the human, and Amicus, and I think even Nefero, about talking about how isolated Lux is, and that it would be a good idea to have regular transportation between Lux and like Adastra City and other places in order to sort of break that isolationist mindset that Lux has. If you recall, also, Scipio is from Lux, so you know. What else? What else? Um, there's also bits in there where Marco is able to interact with Brunus also. So, like, yeah, in the original ending of Adastra, or well, yeah, in the ending of Adastra, there's only like a passing mention of Marco, the human again, meeting Brunus, but only like seeing him like off, like just in like the little meetings that they're having, which is where Scipio is at that time. Um, so it's kind of funny that that Scipio here doesn't actually mention ever actually seeing the human, because he actually does, but it's only like passing glances, where Marco only like sort of notices Scipio, and Scipio only sort of like notices a weird looking alien primate thing. But at least Marco knows Brunus personally. And yeah, like a lot of, there's also the fact that Alexios and Cassius are kind of absent. And originally, when the story ends of Adastra, I believe Cassius decides to move from the Imperial Palace to Adastra City to be with Alexios, even though everyone is telling him, like, why in the world are you still hanging around with this guy? But it's because Cassius fell in love with him. And as far as we know, Alexios at least likes Cassius. He still cares about him, because when Cassius was gonna be, or when Cassius almost died in Adastra, Alexios was visibly distraught. You know, so he did care, even though he kind of wanted the whole moon to burn down. He at least cared about this one person. But yeah, there is some similarities between Alexios and Scipio, at least in the way that they're probably thinking of their assignment. And I mean, obviously their assignments were different, where Alexios was supposed to sow discord and distrust within Adastra to make it so that they are never able to reach out and, you know, become part of the overall galactic society. And Scipio's whole thing is just to gather information, you know, from Nefero, who is on the fringes of the royal family. You know, for the betterment, or to have like a better bargaining chip whenever Adastra is, you know, trying to like form the alliance or whatever. One thing that did change here in this version from the previous version has to do with the fact that some of what Scipio is going through or went through in the past, and by past I mean the previous version, actually ended up becoming a part of the Arches story. And I think that I already kind of mentioned this, you know, at the ending of the Arches videos, even though there is technically one more thing that I would have to record. Is that a lot of like the mental trauma and things like that, that that my favorite little coyote experienced, were supposed to be things that Scipio would have dealt with. And you could see that really painted by the fact that that both of them really talk about their moms. One of them talked about how, despite the fact that she was like never really there mentally, if something happened to him, that she would always be there and like chastise him for like, why are you doing this? Why? No, you have to be healthy and things like that, despite the fact that she wasn't taking care of herself. And despite the fact that it led to her death. But she cared about him. And in here, in the previous version at the very least, but even still here, the mom is somebody important to the main character still. But it more so in the previous version, where there was a whole scene where I'm gonna leave the old videos of Khemia up so you can just go looking yourself if you want. It's gonna be more or less the same, but a little bit different. But in that scene, Scipio is talking about how he wants to be back with his mother. He wants to be back there because he feels safe, because he was recounting a story where he was climbing a tree, but then he fell, he was crying, then his mother came, picked him up, and telling him it was going to be all okay. And it was all in relation to what he went through also in the university, like, during the Cato riots. Again, I'm going to link to another furry YouTuber who did a whole thing about Adastra, where he basically... The video is titled, I think, like something like why I love Adastra or whatever, but it basically recounts the entire story. So that would be helpful, or for anybody else that had seen my original videos, because that was the original thing that I ever recorded for this channel. That are no longer available because I was stupid and deleted them. I mean, actually, I do have them as backups, but I don't want to upload them because they are bad. They are horrible. There are so many mistakes. But anyways, I am looking forward to more Adastra content. Khemia. I'm looking forward to seeing where this story goes. What more would have changed, I guess? Also, in case you haven't noticed, a lot of the artwork is by Haps. And if you saw the previous videos of Khemia, you'll notice that the artwork has changed again. Amicus looks way more different, so does Virginia, but she deserved the glow up, I guess. They're like bigger and more imposing now. Nefero has like that big sort of imposing body still, but he also has like that little goofy sprites too, which I missed. I kind of hope that they all have, or even Amicus has like that goofy little like jumping back in surprise sprite, because that was like one of my favorites because it looks so stupid, but like in a good way. What else? Come on, think of something else. It's been like 3 hours, so probably gonna have more to say after I finish editing it, but who knows if I'm gonna want to re-record any like intro or outro. Maybe I should. I don't know. I'm just tired. My voice hurts. Anyway, so yeah. Thank you all for watching / listening. If you would like to play Khemia yourself, or Adastra, or Interior, whatever, yourself, you can do so by going down into the link in the description, which should have a direct link for the itch.io page where you can download the game and play it yourself. If you would like to support the Echo project, which is developing this visual novel along with other ones, you can do so by going down into the other link in the description for their Patreon page, where you can subscribe and get early access to builds of these visual novels like I do. And you also get some behind the scenes stuff. So like for this one specifically, I already see one of the CGs that's gonna happen immediately after the to be continued part. Which is actually a remake of another scene that had already existed. So Haps is basically redoing everything. So yeah. What else? So yeah, subscribe if you want. Also, all my links down in the description if you want to become a channel member and watch these videos when they're being scheduled instead of waiting until they go public, then, join as a channel member. It supports me. It supports the channel. Come on. And also have a Ko-fi in case you wish to support me through there. And I have a Throne in case you want to, buy me a book. I don't do enough reading, apparently. But yeah, so I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.